coming to the table tonight. These two department heads are going to, give us their plan of, for their future, and that limits the impact of what we can and can't do based on, revenues. We don't know what, the uncertainty that's going to happen, and just like, our commissioner just said, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know. So please give Chief your undivided attention, and of course, when Erica gets up to do her pavement management plan. And Christina, are you on the line out there? Anyway, she's probably on mute. She's provided a memo of the Senate Bill 217 in your packet, and our chief now will be discussing the impacts of, for the department, and then we can ask questions of him, and if Christina is still on the Zoom, we can ask questions of that. So I just want to set the stage for these two updates. They're really, really important, guys. They're really, really important. Christine. Okay, yeah. So you'll have to apologize because...
Mayor, it's not the first time she's been called Christina, believe me.
I'll buy you a cup of coffee.
Yes, you're absolutely right. We did include a memo in the packet from our office. So we have provided some background regarding Senate Bill 2217. You heard Commissioner James talk about that legislation. You heard Mr. Light during his training at 5:15 p.m. Talk about the legislation, and both of them are correct. I mean, this is monumental legislation, and it will shift the public safety, how those services are provided. As pointed out in Christiana's memorandum, she did highlight some of the key changes, and we'll hear from the chief regarding some of those changes. But they're really broken down into reporting requirements, body camera requirements being triggered in 2023, and some shifting liability for local government. So my associate Christiana McCormick, who is on the call, and will be available for questions if you do have any following the chief's presentation. Just so you all know, she does function as a police advisor for a lot of our clients. She has been very helpful to our firm, helping analyze what the impacts will be on our local government clients. So with that, I don't want to take up any of the chief's.
And please pass on my apologies to her.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. So this is a little bit, I guess, of two parts, because there's obviously the update that's included in your information about impacts of Bill 217, and then the slides are really about looking forward over the next 5 and 10 years for growth, expansion, and some associated costs with that. So those are a little bit two different things, but hopefully they go together and will make sense as we go through this. So I'll go through the slides first, and then if you want to come back to the legislative after that, I think that might work for us. Is that okay? So first of all, appreciate your time and giving this glimpse into the next 10 years. As we walk through this, I'll just tell you I've tried to use some simple math and estimates here to really just give us a glimpse of what this might look like. Obviously, we don't know what the growth is going to be, so I've tried to use simple rules of thumb to come up with some projections. If you don't agree with the numbers, that's fine. They obviously won't look like that. They'll be either more or less. But at least it gives us an idea, I think, of just what we're looking at and how quickly that's going to come around. So if we can go to the next slide.
There's a clicker, but it's all the time.
So this first slide will be what our current schedule is, just to give you kind of a picture of where we're at right now. As you know, you approved,
Can we minimize, excuse me, Chief, can we minimize the people on the Zoom so we can see the whole slide?
Yeah,
Just
sure.
put it on that screen.
Oh, thank you.
I don't even know how to do that.
A lot of Zoom meetings.
Okay, so this is our current schedule, utilizing 3 different shifts. You approved additional staffing to help us staff that 3rd shift, if you recall. And so we are working towards that level of staffing. We did have an officer leave, an officer come on. We have 2 more officers starting on the 20th of July. So we're really going to actually start to realize some of the progress late this year when it comes to additional staffing. And we're currently at the level of 15 full-time employees is what we're authorized for. So I think we have 10 right now. We have the 2 coming on, and we'll still need 3 more after that. We've already done interviews to make some additional job offers after those 2. And that should get us through the end of the year. So we're really looking into 2021 before we realize the staffing of 15 full-time employees. So there obviously are several different methods for staffing studies. A lot of times it's a combination of population size, call load, and then kind of what the town's expectations are. If the town expects officers to have time to do self-initiated type of activities, extra patrols, neighborhoods, that type of thing, that can be worked into this formula. There's a rule of 60 and a rule of 75 guidelines that both have the type of a factor built in. So to simplify a fairly complicated statistical problem, that's like saying that 60% of the officer's time is spent handling calls for service, and they have like 40% to actually do self-initiated type of activities, or what you might call proactive type of activities like community policing things. Obviously that requires that you have data on call load and that type of thing. So projecting that type of a scenario out 5 to 10 years is a little more difficult than using population size. So to keep it simple, we're going to use population size tonight. I just didn't want you to think that that's what we plan to base our staffing on. Obviously, we would want to look at numbers with some of this other information going forward, and that will be available. But for tonight, just looking out 5 to 10 years, the easiest rule of thumb is going to be population. So typically, in areas, depending on the crime rates and depending on the desire of the community, they typically use a rule of thumb of maybe 1 officer per 1,000 or up to 2 officers per 1,000. So I split that in half, 1.5 officers per 1,000 residents. Obviously, right now with 4,500 residents, we're just kind of at that threshold. We talked about this before. We really needed to look at it more of how many officers do we need just to cover a 24/7 shift, because we're kind of right at that threshold. So talking about call load or those other things wasn't necessarily feasible at that time. Moving forward, it will be. And as you see, so I've put these predictions or estimates up there for 5 and 10 years. If we double the number of homes in Mead, using the 2.5 residents per household, I think they're actually using 2.9, but I wanted to be a little more conservative than that, so I used 2.5. Plus the math's a little easier, so that gives you 8,500 residents, which would equal at 1.5 officers per 1,000 would equal 12 officers. And then going another 5 years at the same level of increase, and that's basically adding another 1,700 homes. If we were at 12,750 residents, at 1.5 officers per 1,000, that's 19 officers. That makes sense to everybody. Try to keep it simple. But the only thing I forgot to throw up there maybe was the years. So 1,700 homes, 4,500 residents where we are right now, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now. So in 2025, which given that scenario was 12 officers. So you see on patrol, that's 12 officers plugged in, okay? We would have additional needs for additional supervision with more, obviously with more full-time employees. We would have needs for investigations, so there's a detective added in there. There's an additional CSO for code enforcement, that type of activity. And then given the rumors about additional schools in Mead, even if there aren't, we're receiving some pressure to add a third SRO, so assuming that continues, there would be an extra SRO in there. And then additional clerical staff, one, and an additional level of administration with a commander added in there. So you can see, even though we're talking about 4 extra officers, it equates to quite a few more FTEs than that based on support staff and other needs of the department with that type of growth. 2030. So this was the bottom level there, 19 officers at that level of population in 2030. And you can see the additional, the top line there, the administration goes up by 1, I think. Yeah, there's an investigative technician in there. So record evidence, investigative technician, depending on how that workload spreads out, could be, some of those jobs could even be combined or separated out. Likely, words would require an additional person. So that's where that addition is in this case. With 19 officers, 2 detectives and 2 SR and 2 CSOs, given the span of control for supervision, would require 2 additional sergeants. And then school resource officers, if there are additional schools, possibly up to 5. So that's in there as well, coming up to 39 FTEs. Obviously, you can see there's some speculation in there. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but just given probability of if we had that type of growth and we were at that level, this is the type of department that we would need to support service with that population. So how does that relate to police vehicles? Obviously, we're not on a one-to-one vehicle plan, so officers, given, if you go back to the slide with our schedule, you can see that officers work opposite sides of the week. There is some overlap there on Wednesday, which provides opportunities for training, but basically we can figure in for patrol 1 vehicle for every 2 officers. So this equation is utilizing that. We're not able to do that with positions like SROs and detectives because they work Monday through Friday schedules, not offsetting schedules, so they're typically more of a one-to-one car plan. Not to say that you would always need a car for every detective. There could be a shared pool or something like that. So this is based off of that, given the number of full-time employees that you saw before. In 2025, it would require 14 vehicles. In 2030, be 18 to 20. And we are at 8 vehicles right now. That's 5 newer vehicles and 3 older ones that are probably due to be replaced soon, but we are at that 8 vehicles, which fits our needs at the current staffing level. Building needs, obviously with the growth of the department, We have several needs in this area. These factors that are thrown on this slide are spaces that we currently have in the current facility, which is the modular that we share with Public Works. There is actually some meeting conference area in that building. It will be more accessible to us when Public Works moves out. And we'll also have 2 additional office spaces once that occurs. So there will be some growth that happens along with that. And those spaces would be capable of handling the employees that we currently have. Spaces that we do not have but we need, probably the most obvious is training area. That would be classroom or mat room. Typically that's a shared space that's used for both. We do not have a space like that. This room is probably the best space for that type of activity. We have held trainings in this space. It's just difficult to get it Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, like we need to commit to for bringing people in for training classes. But this type of space works very well for that. In fact, this is probably even on the larger side of what I've seen, and pretty much everybody that comes in to do training, if we can get this room, complements us on this facility. Works very well. Recorded interview capability, we do not have that currently. Obviously, you can tell the direction that recording things is going. We will be mandated to record more and more. So that's a capability we would very much like to have. The Sheriff's Department does have that capability at their south substation. We have utilized that in the past when necessary. The biggest issue for us is that we have to have them there to operate it and assist with that. We don't have free run of that building to go in and do a recorded interview without them assisting us to do that. But that is there and is fairly convenient. Firestone is probably the next closest location that has that capability for us to use. Finally, property and evidence storage, another large commitment, if you will, and ever-expanding commitment. Those rooms tend to just keep growing and growing. If you haven't been in our modular and seen our evidence storage space, it's kind of like that closet back there, I guess. It's basically one of the offices with a wall built through the middle of it, and on the other side of the wall is the evidence storage space. So it allows for lockers in the wall, which is best practices. Works very well. There's space in there for officers to process the evidence, package it, and so forth, and then place it in secure lockers. The evidence tech has the only key into the room and can clean out the lockers, and then has to either find a place in that very small area to store it, or go outside to the overflow storage facility, which is the shipping container next to the modular. Is used for that. So, given the fact that that would continue to become larger and larger, most of the time, if we were looking to build or remodel a facility to house property and evidence, we would be looking for that area to be larger than what we currently needed by quite a bit, or possibly just with the ability to add on or expand at a later date. Evidence is typically stored in varying times, so it's all, when it's booked in, it's either 6 months, 3 years, 7 years, or forever. Any homicide evidence is kept forever, so just depending on what the case is, level of case, obviously we don't have a lot of that, but if we're keeping things for 7 years, still a significant amount of time, and it does build up. And then we try to do a destruction at least once a year, where any items that were no longer
So that build, the storage locker thing you have outside, I mean, I'm assuming it's like a metal frame cargo type, maybe pod type building. Does that thing get so hot that it could, I mean, because I know that those types of things can get extremely hot in the sun. Like, do you guys have to be careful what evidence you put in there that can't potentially handle extreme heat? You know, I mean, like stickers come off of things in here. I don't know, I'm just thinking of bizarre things. Things come unglued. Things that, like, could things be destroyed in that container that shouldn't be?
It's, it is possible. I mean, obviously, it's not temperature controlled, which would be ideal. But we are cognizant of what needs to be temperature controlled, and so not putting things out there. There's not a lot that falls into that category, but there are some things that either need to be kept frozen, so they're kept in a freezer, or there may be a few things that you just wouldn't want to put in that out there. It doesn't get, you know, real hot. I mean, but obviously it's not temperature controlled, so it can get pretty warm out there. But we don't notice, like evidence tape that we use, that type of thing is pretty good about lasting, so we don't see that peeling off or that type of deterioration from the...
We ought to put a thermostat out there and see how hot that sucker gets on a 96-degree day, just curiosity's sake. I wonder how hot it really gets, but, okay, I'll trust you on that.